Welcome back to the next episode of the Better Today podcast. Just want to say a big shout out to Quinn's Car Transport for sponsoring this month's episode. Go and check out quinscartransport.co.uk, and just want to say thank you to Sam and all the team down there for everything they're doing to support mental health in the area. So on today's episode we've got Louisa, one of my old friends.
Yeah.
Louisa's got quite a story about her mental health and her life, so I just wanted to get her down, and you've messaged me, haven't you, before, and
Yeah.
Keen to share your story, and hopefully we can help other people.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you want to take us back to the beginning, Louisa, and like when you first noticed you were struggling with your mental health?
Yeah, so, I mean, I've always sort of, I would say being a bit different, but I suppose we all say that, but I believe it's the first time I ever went to the doctors was when I was 11, and that was about suicidal thoughts. Now, I don't know why an 11-year-old needs to be having suicidal thoughts, but that's what was happening. When I first went to the doctors, they believed it was depression. I think the thing is, my moods have always been so up and down, and when I feel a down, it's not just a down, it's a monumental down. So obviously at the times when I would go to the doctors, it was because I was feeling that way inclined, and obviously my mum would always come with me. Also, anything that I say, I just want to say I do love my mum and dad so much, but I think a lot of sort of the way my brain reacts to things is because for a lot of my childhood, they used to own the forge.
Yeah.
So a lot of my childhood they weren't necessarily there for, and I think probably a lot of my abandonment issues come from that, or that's what I've been told anyway. Like I say, I love both of them dearly. Obviously my mum's not here anymore, and it's a case of I'd go to the doctors because I would be having these all-nighty meltdowns, like off the scale meltdowns. And obviously back then, so that would have, I don't even know what years that would have been when I was 11, it was sometime in the 90s, I would assume, or early 2000s. And obviously mental health just wasn't a thing really back then. So obviously my mum and dad have got a child that's seemingly off the scale, doesn't know what to do with herself. And my dad was always the sort of kind of person that's like, oh, well, you really think you've got it hard done to try living my kind of life and this, that and the other, which I get it, but in turn, as a child that is feeling these intense emotions, all it was doing was making me worse.
Because I'm thinking 11 years old as well, that's very young. That's like, it's not 14, 15, it's just out of primary school.
Yeah. And I think what doesn't help, and it didn't help, is sorry, my phone's ringing.
You're alright.
Got no idea who that is. So I was always, from being a child, I've always been loud, always been sort of the funny one, and I've always been sort of the small, bigger one, if that makes any sort of sense. And so primary school was fine, but when I started high school, that's when bullying started. And it was about 11 boys out of my year that used to bully me. You can probably guess who they might have been. And that went on from year 7 to year 10 or 11. And the thing is, I will always be someone that will laugh it off, and I sort of became almost used to just knowing that I was going to get these kind of things said to me, like fat, whatever. I was just used to it, but it didn't stop it hurting. So obviously when you've got things like that going on, and obviously it's a weird time in your life, sort of when you're making friendships and that kind of thing. And I think I just always wanted to fit in.
Right.
So bad. And the thing is, I never struggled to make friends. Like I always had different friendship groups. There wasn't sort of one set of group. But I think I always wanted that almost like a best friend or group of friends, and I never seemed to find it. And there'd be things that I do like going ice skating and whatnot, where that sort of opened up making friends from other schools. But then things like, and obviously I was like, I'm a gamer as well. So as soon as like sort of the internet became a thing, and same with MSN, it opened up a world to be able to make new friends. But with sort of the way my childhood was in terms of maybe feeling abandoned when I was really young, and for whatever way my brain has developed, I get very, very overly attached to people. It doesn't matter, like as soon as I consider someone a friend, I'm like overly attached to them, and it's I can't even explain it because it still happens to this day, unfortunately. But it's like an overwhelming feeling. So if I am to make plans, so for example, I used to go ice skating every week. If for whatever reason that plan didn't happen, it was literally like my life was ending. And that is the impact that it would have on my brain. It's like I can't rationally think about it. It is that my life is ending. I can't possibly go on without doing whatever it is that I needed to do. Or like, for example, if I ever got told off by mum and dad, they'd cut the internet off, which when you're gaming,
that's the ultimate.
It was, but the thing is, and obviously I get it, people like, you need to be punished, but it was like the worst thing that they could have done, because obviously knowing now that I have got BPD and the attachment issues, they were essentially just cutting
it's your
off.
like identity, innit? And they've taken it away as a punishment.
They've literally cut off my lifeline. The one thing that sort of, like, because gaming has always been a massive, massive escape for me. And obviously talking to people through gaming. So the moment that was gone, it was literally like my life has just been taken away from me, which would then in turn mean I'd start screaming the house down, and obviously it doesn't matter how much I reacted to it, they weren't going to switch it back on. But it's just those intense reactions to those kind of things, and I think the more my brain develops that way, the more throughout my life, the stronger the reactions have become to that kind of thing.
What I'm thinking as well is, at such a young age, it's so for your behaviour patterns and your thinking and your emotions to be almost sculpted by your relationship with your mum and dad, and how powerful of a thing that is these early years. So being bullied in like primary school, I wasn't a bully at school, but I hung around with the people who thought it were clever to like pick on people every day. And what one person sees as, you know, kind of just picking on this person or jabbing him in his stomach or taking the dinner money off him, actually that repeated behaviour is traumatic. And actually that happening at 7, 8, 9, 10.
Wait, to be fair, it was like 11.
Yeah.
But in primary school, it wasn't really a problem. It was high school, which obviously from 11 to sort of 15, 16, which
that's when
they're your vital years, really.
Your formative, emotional formative years as well.
Yeah.
And would you say that's been quite a significant factor in how your mental health's turned out as an adult?
I would say yes, in terms of those years, because now, and the thing is, I don't hate anyone that did. Like I've the people that it was, I've had conversations with a few of them, and to them they don't even remember it. But for me, so now, I obviously am a bigger girl, which I am trying to work on, and I have lost weight. But this has haunted me for my entire life, because when I look back when I was in high school, I wasn't fat at all. It's just because I was smaller, and because the people that I was friends with were a lot slimmer than me, it made me look bigger. But when I look back at pictures of myself, I hate that anyone ever made me feel like that. And the problem is, because I got told it so much, it was like, well, I might as well eat now because I'm being called fat anyway. And I turned to food for an escape, which then the weight, then I did become fat. but I just think and even it's a struggle. It's a massive struggle, and I've always, because I got so used to them saying things like you're fat, you're this, you're that. I then started picking on myself, so I've always used it as a way to sort of defend myself. So if anyone calls me fat, I'll just, or before anyone can say it to me, I'll be like, oh, or I'm fat. Even when it comes to things like dating now, I need to make it very clear that someone knows that I'm bigger. I'll put full length pictures and whatnot, and even though they can see what I look like, I will need to reiterate the fact that I'm fat, and that's all a defence mechanism that comes from that.
So, as a bully as well, and I think this is interesting for anyone that's listening, and especially if you've got kids and stuff that are in high school. It's interesting that you said that a lot of these people that were bullying you don't actually remember it, and this is the two opposite ends, because you've got the bully that has just forgotten about it and moved on, and then the person that were bullied is still struggling as an adult in their 30s. And at school, when I were knocking around with lads who used to go out and start fights every day, we just thought it's funny, it's a laugh. But actually, people need to have a real think about how little things every day can affect someone. And I'm genuinely embarrassed that some of the things I was involved in at school, or even out at school, like hanging around in Kivo and stuff like that. There was a woman in Kivo, and I'm not going to say her name, but anyone from around here knows who she is, but she struggled badly with her mental health, and she used to hear voices and I think she was schizophrenic and stuff like that. And how some of my friends and me associated with used to treat this woman was despicable on so many levels, like vile. But this period of time, it's a similar sort of time as when you were younger, and so much stigma, so little knowledge about mental health, and a lot of ignorance. It sounded like your dad were quite ignorant to it. And what my friendship group and years before did to this woman in what we thought was a laugh was absolutely horrific. And when I think back, I'm ashamed that we were in a place where we thought that was funny, and I have no idea what it must have done to that poor woman's mental health. But I'm so glad that we're in a position now where I'm more than happy to hold my hands up and admit what a dickhead I was. But we're in a position now where people know a lot more, and there's a lot more information out there. And on this as well, Louisa, what I wanted you to do is tell me about your diagnoses as well, and how they came about.
Yeah, so I mean, the BPD, obviously I went so many years with, and I would say the way BPD affects me, which is borderline personality, because a lot of people do get it mixed up with bipolar.
Including me.
and I would say the difference between bipolar and, I mean, I don't know all that much about bipolar, but I do about BPD. It's similar in terms of, obviously bipolar will have the mood, the sort of switching of the moods, but I think they have prolonged periods, sort of where they'll be on a high for a period of time and then on a low for a period of time. With me, it's up or down. I could be the happiest person ever, and someone could do something, say something, and my mood will just instantly drop. And I've got a lot better with it now because of something that happened last year, which I'll talk about in a minute. But I've got a lot better with controlling how low my emotions will go, and I've got to the point now where I don't really have suicidal thoughts anymore. I do go really low, but the suicidal thoughts have, since last year, have got a lot better. But I've spent until I was 27, which is when I did get diagnosed, I have spent my entire life just dipping like that. And in the same instance, if something's going really well, or like a new relationship, new friendship, I experience really high highs. Right. But it's mainly the lows that are the biggest issue. So anything can trigger it, and it's just immediate down. And the problem is, because those switches happen so fast, that's why it's so difficult to control them. And other things such as I've touched on attachments. I get so attached to people, and the problem is I almost feel everybody else's feelings. Because I've got such intense feelings, I will feel for other people.
That's really interesting.
So, for example, if I do see someone doing wrong, or say, for example, if something happened to someone, and even if they weren't bothered about it, it would bother me, because I would be feeling, would almost portray what I think they should be feeling. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah.
So, like, I don't know, if someone went and bumped the car into a post tomorrow and it didn't bother them, they were just like, oh, it's just a bump, I'd be like getting myself in a tizzy, because I would feel how they feel. Or even like if I watch things on the internet, I can feel everybody else's feelings. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing.
That's a lot. That's a lot to manage, innit, and take on board.
Yeah, because like there's been occasions where people have done something or said something and they've been like, well, I'm not bothered, and I'm like, but why? Like, because I'm so bothered for them, and they're like, I'm not bothered. But for me, I'm like, I don't understand, because it's almost like it sits on my chest, that how I feel for that person or for whatever it is, and I can't switch that off, unfortunately.
Do you know the lows? I've got this thing where, and it's been quite prevalent lately, I could have like 3 really amazing things happen to me in a week, and I'd be so happy, and then one slight bit of negativity that's not even that bad, that would be the most dominant thing in my... So the good stuff's like, that's just shelved a minute, and I'd spend time dwelling over this one, like someone's had a dig at me about something or left a shitty comment. But I guess you get both sides of it, don't you? Because you get the highs of the highs, and then...
I would say the same as what you've just said. There were low
would the low be the dominant?
Yeah. Oh, 100%. And it's almost like once the low one does come, it's all, like I completely forget about the good until such a time. And this is the thing. This is why. I mean, and I understand why it was so hard for doctors to diagnose it, because I would go to the doctors at that point, but then within the space of a day, sometimes even hours, once I've calmed down, my mood will come back up.
Right, yeah.
But obviously I'm not then going to go to the doctors the next day and be like, oh, I'm all right now. Yeah. It was always sort of the downtime. So obviously to them it did look like depression, because obviously you've got someone coming in that's saying they're suicidal, they can't cope, whatever. But then they don't know that sort of the next day, 2 days, however long it takes, I'm all right, and I've come round, and there'll be something else that's taken over my thoughts.
Yeah.
And I think, it's just how, it's the intense emotions and things like that.
Because I'm thinking, I've got my own personal view, and I don't share it professionally when I'm in my group meetings and stuff like that, but about like antidepressants and stuff like that, where you kind of just flatlined and kind of, there's not really any ups or any downs, you kind of just like that. Sometimes I think it's better to feel the highs and the lows rather than none, but then I can imagine it sounds quite exhausting, your situation. So
I think it's weird, because it's not weird, but it's different for me now, and I think this is why I'm so reluctant to sort of... So I've had a support worker for a year since my last crisis. I've also been on it is an antidepressant, but I didn't get put on it for that. I got put on it for sleep, because I've never ever been able to sleep normally. I've always been a night owl, insomnia. Pretty much since the first time I went to the doctors, I've always had a horrendous sleeping pattern. So I got put on an antidepressant for sleep until I then got prescribed something else as soon as I got diagnosed with ADHD. And the thing is, I don't know if it's the support worker, whether it's my own wanting to change, or if it's the tablets or whether it's a combination of all those 3 things that have made me now be in a position where I'm, for the first time in my life, have felt happiness, which I haven't for 33 years. This is the first year in my life that I have genuinely felt
Credit
happiness.
to you, because this is what we all, and when we have our meetings on a Wednesday as well, we have people at different stages. They come for different reasons, but what we aspire for everyone is to find happiness, because I think in this world that we're living in this fast-paced, I don't know, it's very stressful, very unforgiving, and I think sometimes it's easy to become unhappy and pretty difficult to come out of the side of it. But we'll come on to that soon, because it sounds like your support work as well, when I'm reading from notes, it sounds like quite an intriguing role that they've played in it. What about your ADHD then? Is that without the sleep and stuff like that, do you reckon, or...?
I mean, I've always shown signs of ADHD anyway. Like when, obviously, as soon as I started looking into it, and then you sort of think back to when you're in school, when you were a child, it didn't even cross my mind that they could have been a thing until probably a year after the BPD, which was, I must have been 28 then, and that's when I started looking into it. And then with everything that I saw, I was just like, oh my God, like, what if that is the reason? And then when I think back to school, so I've always been known as last minute Louisa. Obviously, the thing is with BPD and ADHD, a lot of the symptoms do overlap.
Right.
So with rejection sensitivity, that kind of thing. But when it comes to the way it affects me is, so all my coursework was done literally the night before. It didn't. The thing is, I would start out every term like, oh, I'm gonna do better this time. Yeah. I'm gonna I'll get new stationery because I'm on it. I'll get a new diary.
Best of intentions, yeah.
Literally, but the thing is, in my brain and in myself, I genuinely thought this was the time, which has been the same for everything in my life. This is the time, and then it just wouldn't happen. I can't explain, but it just wouldn't happen. But it's almost like I needed the panic of the deadline to do anything. So revision was done the night before. Everything was just left until the last given moment, because then I would be able to just do everything that I couldn't do in the space of 4 hours. The less time I'd got to do it, the more I was gonna do. And that was, like I say, every year, every month, every term, I would try and...
Well, that's exhausting as well, isn't it?
It's a really bad way of managing it, but obviously that's the way that I sort of... Now I look back, I know that's what it was, but at the time, I just knew that it would get done, it just would get done last minute. No matter how much I tried to tell myself that I will do it, because everyone would be like, oh, why don't you just do a bit every day? But there was always other things I wanted to do, and gaming always took over, whereas I sort of had learned that if I did it the last night, I can get loads done under panic. And I mean, I managed to scrape decent GCSEs, so it does work. But like things like that, and then when it came to being an adult, so it still affects me now. I'm still awaiting medication for it, but at work, so I've been in and out of jobs, and a lot of them have been admin based. Now admin is probably a really bad job for someone with ADHD, because it's constantly like flitting between tasks, having to prioritise things,
and needing to be organised as well.
Which I'm really bad at all of those things. And I remember my first admin job, and it's a girl called Louise from Kiverton. You might have read this out, like, because I'm mentioning names here.
Yeah, that's fine.
And I worked at Green Corps doing recruitment for the agency. And I remember sort of within my first week, the lady who was meant to be training me, she got sacked. So I was having to interview the 20 people in a room with a presentation that I'd just never seen before. And at that point, it was like, you either sink or you swim. I managed to do it. But then from that moment, it sort of set a thing of, this is how this job is going to be.
Yeah.
And it was like, I'd come in the morning, I'd have to walk go and sign all the workers in, then it's up for interviews, all the paperwork, then put all the paperwork on the system, then go around the factory so it was just constantly so much going off. And so that job really played havoc with my mental health. And from that point, I was like, right, I need just a job that's just in an office, I think, because at that point I was like, oh, it's because I'm doing all these jobs around the factories. So then I got another job for a company called Serverlec, and to be fair, I did struggle, but that company I will give credit to because they were so good with my mental health. And the last manager that I had there, she was brilliant, and also the lady, because I worked really closely with one lady, and she really, because the journey of sort of getting diagnosed happened whilst I was at that job.
Right.
And it's also a period where I lost my mum. So there was the weekend of, which I know obviously I've put it on my Facebook and things before, and that weekend was one of the biggest turning points for me. So I'd been working, I don't know how long I'd been working there, maybe 2 years. And I got a phone call to say that my mum was in hospital, which my mum had got COPD, so I wasn't a stranger to her sort of being in hospital, and neither was she. And I went and, my auntie rang me and she said, she's not really good. I just need you to be aware that she's not good. So I was like, all right, fair enough. And when I turned up at the hospital, she really wasn't herself at all. So I stayed there for a few hours. But by the time we'd left her in a little side room. And she was fine. She was like, I just want to sleep. Like, I want you all to leave. I want to go on my iPad or whatever. So that was that. And when I got home, my partner at the time walked in. I'd just got in bed and he walked in and he said, I've had enough. I don't want to do this anymore. So obviously I was just like, what the hell?
At the time when you've just left the hospital?
I've just got in from being at a hospital. So obviously, the story that I'm about to tell, it is a bad one, and it will make him look bad, and I can't lie, he was for it. Like, the way he treated me in that period was bad. But what I will say is the relationship wasn't, we should have been together in the first place. But within a very short space of us getting together, he lost his dad in a motorbike accident, which that was 6 years prior to obviously this situation. So we'd been together for 6 years. We never should have been, but, and again, which links to BPD, is I think I'd got attached at a time where I just wanted a boyfriend, and I'd grown attached, and sort of that was that. So I can't tell if it was I was attached to him as a person or just attached to. Do you know what I mean?
Something, yeah.
Obviously the relationship happened, and obviously we went through quite a lot of deaths in both of our families throughout this period, and then we moved out and whatnot, and then obviously we got a mortgage. So anyway, I came back and he said I want to end things. So obviously at that point I'm like, what the hell? So I didn't end up speaking to my mum the next day. I rang my dad, and my dad said, yeah, I've been to see her, she's absolutely fine. I'll tell her that you've rang. And I said, me and Lewis have split up. I don't want mum to know because I don't want to upset her.
Right.
And he said, that's fine. He said, I'll tell her that you've rang and that you're busy or whatever. So I didn't speak to her on the Friday. And then on the Saturday, there was a knock at my door because my ex's mum lived opposite. So I went downstairs and she said, Louisa, I need to take you to the hospital. So obviously at this point I'm panicking, but I thought she was probably still alive, just not in a good way. So I got ready and we got to the hospital, and as soon as we got to the car park, my dad came out and I could see Diane's face, and she looked at my dad, and obviously she's had to tell her child before, and she knew immediately what was, none of us even said anything. We just started crying in the car park, and then obviously my dad took me up to see her, and she'd gone. And I think it's strange looking back because I can picture it clear as day. But there were so many emotions as to everything that I'd lost in that moment, because obviously losing my mum will forever be the hardest thing that has ever happened to me. But I don't think I've ever grieved it. I genuinely, truly don't think I've ever properly grieved it, because I'd lost so much in that weekend. So I knew then that I was losing the house, I was losing my relationship, I was losing obviously his family. So yeah, obviously I was coming to terms with the fact of losing her. And my ex took me back to our house, and he sat on the bed and he went, I'm going to go out tonight. And I was just like, what? I went, well, there's not really anything I can do, is there? So I'm sat there thinking, I've just lost my mum. I don't know what to do. And yeah, so I was like, right, okay. I can't even tell you what. I think I might have gone to my dad's. And if I'm being honest, that week sort of after losing my mum, I think I must have stayed at my dad's for maybe 3 days and then I'd come home. And I think the way I was dealing with it that week is I was going and meeting people, and I think I used sex as a sort of, like, I couldn't tell you who I met during that period, but I definitely did. And it was just, and other than that, it was gaming. I think I spent pretty much every hour of every day on just gaming. And then within sort of a week, he kept going out, and there was a girl that kept picking him up, and I was like, what's going off here? So anyway, that carried on, and then a couple of weeks later it was my mum's funeral, and by this point he'd been sleeping with this scarf on his pillow, so I thought he's obviously met someone. And at this point I'm still all over the place, didn't know if I wanted him back, my brain didn't know what he wanted really. And he went straight from her funeral to take this girl on a weekend away. I mean, when he came to the funeral, so at my mum's funeral there were loads of my school friends, so like from primary school, it was so lovely, but obviously they all knew what had happened, so he was sort of delegated to take. I mean, fair play to him for showing up, because I didn't expect him to, but I think had he not have done, he would have looked even worse. But obviously he was delegated to his own little table, and then sort of midway, like pretty much as soon as we got to the wake bit, it was like, oh, I'm gonna go. And I was like, all right. He was like, I'm going away. I thought, you're gonna go from my mum's funeral to take this girl on a weekend away literally 2 weeks after we've split up. So I was like, right, okay. And then it must have been about another week later. We're still living in the same house at this point. On what would have been our 6-year anniversary, all my friends kept ringing me. And they're like, Louisa, are you all right? And I was like, yeah, why? And they were like, you've not seen, have you? So on the day of our 6-year anniversary, I went, don't tell me he has. They went, he has. In a relationship with this new
Who is this guy? I'm just trying to get a picture of how your head is, considering it's one thing then another thing, but the immense trauma of losing your mum. And I've been in relationships before where you know it's done, but you're still together and you kind of got to go through that process. But to be so...
Well, there was one night, in fact, I've missed this out. It was sometime in between. I think it must have been after the funeral, and I'd been gaming. I wasn't working I was on compassionate leave, and I'd had quite a bit of wine to drink that night, because I'd just turned to drink because there wasn't really anything else, and like I say, I was gaming, and he'd been out for the night, and I remember that night I was trying to contact all of my friends, and no one was responding to me. So other than being on the Xbox, nobody close to me was responding, and I rang him that night because he was out, obviously. Now I know where he was, and I rang him and I said, where are you? And he said, I'm just on my way back. And I said, all right. He said, I'll be back soon. So I said, all right. And then he came in and I just burst out crying. I was like, I can't cope. And he literally just went like this and put his arm around me like this, and he went, you'll be all right. And I was just like, I won't. And obviously, with the way my moods go, I was down. I was as far down as you can go. And And he went, I need to go to sleep anyway. So I sat on this sofa. It must have been about 3 o'clock in the morning, and I sat there, obviously, had quite a bit to drink. And we'd got, so I was sat in, we'd got like an upstairs living room. And do you know when they used to paint walls and they used to make it so that it got the spikes in the paint?
Yeah.
And I don't know why I did it. And I sat on the floor and I just started banging my head against this wall.
Like Artex.
Yeah, I was smashing my head. I knew it, like it was hurting it, but I just, I don't know. I didn't want to be here, and I was just doing it. And he heard me and he went, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Nothing." He knew what was going off, and when I say I was hitting it, I mean I was smashing.
Lost control completely.
I've got a picture of it, and anyway, so I went to bed, and I think I'd almost knocked myself out, because I remember getting in bed, and then he woke me up at some point because he came in and said, I'm gonna work, and I got up and I thought, what the fuck, and I walked out of the room and he looked at me and he went, what the hell? So then I looked in the mirror and it was literally a purple, like with little like bits of blood in it. It was huge. And I was like, what the hell? And he was like, why did you do that? And I was like, I don't know, maybe because I'm dealing with the fact that I've just lost my mum and I've had a lot to drink, probably. So anyway, when the night where, during the day when he announced this new relationship, obviously I was like, why would you do it today? And he was like, well, what does it matter? And he was like, well, I don't see why it matters. And I was like, it's like you've just not thought about me during this whole thing. And I said, like, that night when I was talking about me hitting my head, I said, you didn't do anything then. Well, what could I have done? I said, you saw that I was a human being that needed help. I said, you could have rang my best friend, you could have rang an ambulance, you could have rang anyone. It wasn't a case of I'm your ex. At that point, I was a human that needed help.
Yeah, because this is what I'm getting. It's basic human, like, decency, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, it's not about you wanting him back or anything to do with you two as a couple. It's like if you saw someone in the street doing that, you'd want to. And I think what you're doing here is you've lost control, but also the lack of empathy and the lack of compassion. It needed to come out somehow.
Yeah.
And obviously, I think if you were really drunk as well, your brain's not working like it should, so it's just come out in a. But that sounds really like visualising it in your head and Artex and
I'll
stuff.
show you a picture. It was really.
But you're like, it's got to come out, hasn't it? You've got to get it. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't, like I said, I don't know why I chose to do that, but it was.
Sometimes I don't think it's a choice, is it? It's just things happen when.
Yeah.
I have no idea how your brain must have been with that mix of.
It was.
It's so much to process at once, and then his how insensitive he was, considering. And again, even if he's like, I don't want to be with you, we're not a thing, and I'm moving on, you could still be a lot more decent.
Yeah.
And considering the situation you're in, and considering you still live together as well.
Yeah. Because
normally in this situation, if you went your separate ways, it's kind of different, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, because like it wasn't even like I didn't particularly want him back, because we both knew that the relationship wasn't right. We knew that for a long time. But I think, like you say, it was just that lack of just. And I think the other thing that hit hard for me is that he'd been through what I was going through. Now, I don't know if he sort of didn't show the empathy because he didn't want to sort of lead me on or anything like that, but I'm still like, it still confuses me as to how a person could show such little towards someone that you've been with for 6 years and towards someone that has just lost their mum. And I think that is another part of why I've not grieved it properly, is because so much happened, and how do you process?
What you've done is a classic, and I'm a master in it, blocking out and filling your time with every available minute being consumed in something. So whether it's sex or gaming, the times you need to pass the time, the more time you spent busy is less time you spent thinking, but what that does is it just shoves it to back, doesn't it? But then it's going to come out at some point, isn't it? Whether it's in an healthy way or in an unhealthy way. But that being said, it's a very logical thing to do, because what you've had to do, all that you've had thrown at you at once. Normally people get one big thing and you're like, shit, how do I get through this? You've had bang, 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 bang.
And then when you take into consideration the fact that I was undiagnosed ADHD and BPD.
Yeah, and then the other thing, what we're going to come back to is this period of time you've had from being a child into adulthood with no diagnosis, no understanding of what's affecting you, then having to battle that on its own and throw in all this trauma, that's a hell of a lot. That's a hell of a lot. Have you, in Kiverton, in this area, in Mother Valley, we've had a massive issue with suicide in the last few years. Is that something that's affected you, thoughts or anything like that?
Do you know what? It has, but and I think this is the difference. So with all of there have been a couple of occasions where I have attempted it, but in all of those attempts, I don't want to die. It is almost like a cry for help, and almost like I just want the suffering to end, which before I was diagnosed, I didn't know what it was, so I didn't know where to put that energy, and I didn't know where this energy was coming from. So the only logical way for me to end that suffering was to, and like I say, because my moods go so quickly, because they would immediately go to suicidal, it's not my rational brain thinking that, if that makes sense. And I think that's what makes BPD so dangerous. I think it's considered one of the most dangerous mental illnesses that there can be, because of how quickly you will go to that stage, and because it's not your rational brain thinking those thoughts. So there was a time when me and my dad had an argument, and he'd gone to bed because he was working that night, and he'd had a drink. And he went upstairs. I think I was 21 at this time. And I was like, how can you just go to bed on an argument like this? And he'd done the whole, like, kicking off, whatever. So I just switched, and I just ended up taking a load of tablets. And I shouted upstairs, I said, you need to come downstairs. Why? Because I've done something stupid. And he came downstairs, and obviously he saw the tablet packets. And at this point, I started panicking then. And he went, why the fuck have you done that for, you fucking stupid, whatever. So then I started panicking even more, like, and he's like, you better fucking sick them up. And so then obviously I started trying to do that. And by this point, the tablets are starting to kick in, and I'm like getting a bit weird. So he rang the ambulance, and in that time I sort of sat on the floor, and I was sort of in and out of consciousness. And from that point, as soon as he realised how bad it was, because I think I was on the floor saying, I just wanted to make you proud, I just don't want to feel like this. That's when his sort of demeanour changed, and he was like, of course I'm proud of you, like, why would you ever think that, and this, that, the other. So then the ambulance turned up and took me to hospital. My mum was working nights at the time, so obviously she got the phone call to say, obviously your daughter's
It's
done.
every parent's worst nightmare, isn't it?
Yeah. And looking back, obviously I do regret it, but it's one of them things that I sort of didn't know. It's the only way I knew how to deal with it and to try and get help. Like, obviously there was always going to be a risk of me, but in my head it stops the suffering. So anyway, I went to hospital, and it turned out that the tablets that I took, all it just meant was that I was going to be constipated for a long time. But obviously, being in the hospital, I think that was the first time my mum and dad realised how bad it was, because up until that point it was just sort of extreme.
So it's this like pivotal moment in it where, because what we're thinking when you're saying about your dad, I can relate to it as a dad in a way, because it's almost like your ego as this persona, and you know his first thoughts are anger, and why have you done this? And actually, it's got to a certain point where the ego's bypassed. And obviously I don't know what your mum's perspective were, but I think seeing your child like that, it's almost like it happened with Marley and Jasmine last year. And when you're in that sort of mind space, it's almost like all your thoughts and feelings and awareness are kind of like, it's when it's life and death, it's almost like you're in this crucial, critical part of thinking where your dad's almost gone from this tense, like, stern bloke to like, he's been sincere and honest. And I've tried this past year to be more, drop my guard a bit, be more softer and more compassionate. What I think what you've done is it's kind of like, it's forced their hand in a way. It's like, this is my reality, this is my situation. And it sounds like they've...
because that was one of the times. I mean, there's been a couple of other, but the other big one was last year, that was the first one to do with my dad, which again, that was how quickly his lack of sort of, he wanted to go to bed in an argument and whatnot, and I'm sort of then feeling abandoned. That's what then triggered that. But last year, I think it was last year, or it might have been, in fact it was the year before. So I'd used a group called the Travel Squad as a big outlet. So I was going on weekends away with strangers, like you go hiking and like basically you all hire out a campsite,
right.
And you'll get drunk at night and then you'll go on hikes or whatever. And I was basically using any bit of money I could, taking loans out, getting myself into debt to go on these weekends, because I was almost using it as a mask, because I'd go and obviously get drunk, have fun, make new friends. But I wasn't addressing what the actual issue was. And then one weekend, I can't even remember what it was. So I'd been to Creamfield South, and this was sort of one of the first times that I'd properly tried drugs. So I did MDMA. I got my phone robbed on the first night.
Right.
But I ended up having the best weekend ever, and obviously drugs were involved. Having this amazing weekend, and then I got home and I've always struggled with like keeping up on top of like tidy and stuff like that. And obviously I'd been back at work, my flat was a mess and everything. So, with not sleeping as well, because I wasn't sleeping, I'd gone to work on no sleep, and in my head I thought, right, I'm gonna get back from work, I'm gonna have a little drink, go to bed early, and then wake up tidy and then go to work. And it didn't. I got home and I drank, and I just drank and drank and drank. And I don't know fully what happened that night, because I pretty much blacked out, but I was on the phone to two of my friends from this travel group, and they lived down south, so all they knew was I was obviously acting off the scale, crazy. And they called an ambulance. I've not really got much memory of this night. I know that the ambulance came, and obviously it took me to hospital, and I spent a long time in the waiting room, probably throwing up, running to the toilet and throwing up. And I was on my own for this whole period. And in the morning, so they finally put me in a bed, and in the morning my auntie rang me and she was like, "What's happened?" And I was like, I don't know, I just don't know. And that had a serious breakdown, because obviously my friends had rang my auntie and my best friend as well, and I just had this almighty mental breakdown of all breakdowns. And then I got taken to like an assessment unit for mental health, and I was sat with two psychiatrists, and I literally just got everything out in the open, and they said we would look to section you. They said, but we don't think it'll help. They said it's very clear that it's the symptoms of EUPD or BPD that is causing you this amount of stress. And that's when they first mentioned ADHD as well. And they said, we do think you need a lot of help, but we think sectioning you will be the worst thing that we could do for you right now. And because my auntie was also in this when sort of everything came out, she then understood the extent of it. And that's the moment that she realised that I really do need help. And that was almost like my very last cry for help, because I've been to the doctors I can't even count how many times I've been to the doctors about my mental health. And then that's sort of when I first got put onto there was a talking therapy, And she then referred me to a Dulham, which is, I'm not sure if it's a charity or it's, but they work with people with mental health, and I got assigned my support worker. And this was the first time where it finally felt to me like things were going to change. And again, with my dad as well, he sort of really took on board what my auntie had said from this meeting, and he sort of came round a bit. He'll always be a bit sceptical. And
his mind's opened up more to...
and sometimes, up until when all this was going off, I was in a job at somewhere in Sheffield, and they were so bad at dealing with mental health. So I'd been off from November to January, and when I went back, so I'd got myself to a point where I thought, right, I'm probably ready to go back. And when I went back, they went, right, your workload's increased by 20%. By the end of your what's the period called where you need to sort of, like, basically where they ease you into 2 weeks, you need to be up to scratch by 2 weeks, otherwise there's really going to be problems. So on my first day, I'm sat there thinking, what the fuck? Like, I've just got off for mental health and now you're just putting all this stress on me. But at this point I'm thinking I need to keep a roof over my head. Right. And I remember my manager at the time saying, do you think you're going to be able to do it? Like, are you sure you're happy here? And she was a lovely lady. I still speak to her now. And as a manager level, she had to be a certain way, and obviously she cared about the business. But she took me into a room and she said, Louisa, are you happy? In 6 years, do you see yourself working here? And obviously I burst out. I was like, no. Yeah. And she was like, you need to be honest. And I was like, yeah, but I'm not going to be able to afford to. And she was like, Louisa, she said, because obviously I'm chewing my fingers now, but the whole time of me being off work, my fingers had got better. And she grabbed my hand and she went, you've been here for 1 day. She went, look at your hand. And she said, I've got a duty of care to you as a human being. She said, and I really think you need to seriously think about what you're doing. And obviously at this point I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm going to lose my job. I'm not going to have any income.
Catastrophising it.
Yep. So anyway, I went into this HR meeting. So my manager said, be honest in the HR meeting. So anyway, it came to this HR meeting. But at this time, I can't remember if it was my dad or my auntie saying, don't feed into whatever they're trying to say. Like, if they're telling you that you can't do it, like... Yeah. And in this meeting, they sort of were doing that, but they basically said, you either need to be able to be up to scratch, or we can let you go on health reasons. You'll get a full month's pay, and we'll let you go that way. Otherwise, you'll be on the smaller hours that you're doing until you're obviously back up to stand, like, until you've done this 2 weeks. But then you need to be at where you need to be. So in my head, I'm thinking, what do I do? I'm being offered a month's pay and they'll let me go on health reasons, or do I stay for another 2 weeks and hope that I might enjoy it? Which I knew that I wouldn't, because I hated it. And halfway through the meeting, like, I was sort of trying to say what I thought they wanted me to say, like, oh, well, I don't know how I'm feeling, whatever. And my manager just turned around and she went, you need to be honest. And I said, yeah, no, I'm not happy. I need to go. So I've left that job, and then obviously I was getting all the help with the support worker. I got put on a tablet for my sleep, which is an antidepressant, but I wasn't put on it for that. I was put on it for sleep. And things I just almost started feeling better. Like, with my support worker, she was helping with things like debt. Like, she came round and she was helping me with my flat, which... It's almost embarrassing to admit, because my flat has been in some horrendous states. And, like, you see things on TikTok, like, you know, people doing the cleaning videos and stuff, and there's people commenting saying, like, oh, I could never let my house get to that point. But it is so easily done. Yeah. And, like, I've got videos on my phone of how bad mine has been, and I look, even when I'm in that space, I look around and I think, how the hell, one, has it got like this, and two, how the fuck do I sort it out? Yeah. And with ADHD, again, it gets to a certain
It's an ADHD
point.
trait, isn't it? Yeah.
It gets to a certain point, and then I'll just blitz everything, and you would never even know that it ever got to that point. But when I'm in, like, the first time my support worker came round, she walked in, and you could see the look on her face. She was a bit shocked, but she was like, it's fine, we'll sort it. And throughout the whole time of being with her, because I've been with her for a year now, I'm not entirely sure how long I've got left with her, she's like, it's fine, we'll deal with it.
How nice does that feel, do you know, considering the chaos that you've had? That's what I'm getting in a minute. It's like, you've been living in this like, and you're probably thinking, I know how it is with the cleaning thing with ADHD. I saw something on TikTok, like, I don't know if you've seen any of these threads, like, hacks for people that have got ADHD, and loads of people in comments are saying stuff, and someone put, if your house is messy, invite someone round at like short notice.
Body doubling.
So like, they're coming around in 2 hours.
Oh, yeah.
And you'll be like, start whizzing everything.
Literally.
But if you think someone's coming around on Friday, you don't chip away at it. You like get towards like that. But for you to have that person that's come in and almost like reassured you, because the chaos in your brain, and I think that reflects in your surroundings, doesn't it? So that messiness is a reflection on your busyness in your head. And for someone to come in and you're thinking, they're going to judge me, they're going to think this, they're going to think that, and for her just to go, it's fine, that must be like powerful.
Yeah.
She sounds good.
She was, and same, I mean, we're still working on the debts and stuff, but again, like, I used to have such a fear of opening my post box because I'd let things build up so much. And she was like, it's all right, just give it to me, I'll open it, we'll deal with it, and it'll be fine. She was like, there isn't anything that we can't not deal with. And just having some, like, just hearing that and knowing that it's not just me dealing with it. Like, I'll open my post box on my own now.
Yeah, but do you know what I'm getting as well from this is, do you know, like, your abandonment stuff, and I think especially in this day and age where everyone's so busy and everything's quite cold, and it's just a bit of good old-fashioned care and compassion as well, isn't it? Because kind of that reassurance and warmth is, and especially these days, a lot of sectors we work in mental health and addiction, it's all very clinical and all very like, you go for a meeting, you sign in, and everyone's like, you're in and out, and it's all kind of like robotic and stuff.
Yeah.
And then when you meet someone who goes that extra yard, and especially, what I'm getting from you is it's like you've been on this whirlwind, and then all of a sudden someone's like, I did that thing, I was like that once, and it's kind of like, you let them pile them up, because you know as soon as you open one, you're opening that kind of worms, aren't you, and all the dread and fear and all that. And actually, all it does take is someone disconnected from it, just go, let's sort it out. Yeah.
Literally, she's done that for everything. It's like she was like a little guardian angel, which she still is. But yeah, she changed a lot for me. And then sort of midway through last year, my uncle messaged me and he said, oh, send me a copy of your CV. So I'm thinking, right. So anyway, I sent him my CV and he said, oh, do you fancy meeting up for it? Like, I potentially might have a job for you. So I went and met him and he said, nothing's promised. He said, but I might need someone for admin. So I'm thinking, all right. Obviously, talked about wage and stuff, and he was like, you can work from home, like, it's not a really stressful job, whatever. And I'm thinking, oh God, this sounds perfect. And then obviously I'm getting my hopes up, thinking, oh my God. And anyway, he said, I'm going to go for a meeting sort of with who he works for and mention it to them and see what they say. And then he rang me and he was like, do you fancy a job? And I was like, no way. Like, really? And he was like, yeah. So obviously I got this job. And since then, it's like my life has just completely done a 180. Like, I've got money to be able to do things that I wanted to. And last year, because last year I pretty much spent the whole time hibernating. Up until getting that job, I was just gaming, sleeping, not working, not doing. I didn't do anything at all. I think I maybe went to one festival.
Yeah.
And that's it. And I said to myself, this year, I'm doing everything. Like, I'm getting myself out there. I'm doing it all. I'm going to lose the weight. I'm going to just get myself out there. I've always wanted to be into raving and festivals, and fair play to me. I don't think I've not been to a rave for a single weekend this year. I've already lost a stone just this year, and I'm just doing everything that I wanted to do. In work, I'm settled, like just working from home, not having like the constant, like it's like I've been able to put processes in place for myself and figure out a way for me to work, as opposed to a big company that's like, you need to do this, and it got to be done this way.
Yeah.
Because of the way my brain works in terms of ADHD, I can put little things in place. And just the other day, I figured out a new thing where I can put colours next to things, that because I got made, for some reason I had the wrong kind of account and I got it switched the other day. So now I can put things in place that just help my brain to remember things and work better, so that I can do a good job. Whereas before, I've just never had that.
And do you know, the ADHD brain as well, and I think I'm, as we go through this, I'm like self-diagnosing myself with ADHD, but it's so relatable. And I think for me, I really disliked working for people and under people and having to fit into their ways or their methods or their routines and stuff. And I know I do a lot of work with Richard's filming and some other guys, but I really like the freedom to like manage my own time. Sometimes it's not good, because then some days you do zero,
You get distracted.
and then other days do 10,000 things. But I love not having to answer to anyone or not having to fit into someone else's. But I know other people do like their routines as well, don't they? But it's not for me.
Yeah.
It's not for me. So the raving thing, what I'm getting from that as well is, and when you first messaged me about like coming on guest list to some at parties and stuff, I didn't even know you were like into it, but is it almost like a feeling of freedom and expression, you know, getting out there and dancing and just hearing that music? And because I think hearing your story, obviously you sent me a few details through your story before, but hearing it sounds so intense and stressful. So raving, is it kind of like you said you've booked a last minute one tonight?
Yeah, I'm going to
it's like that freedom to just go and have it, innit, and just go and
I went to my first ever one, like proper rave, because I've done festivals before that have had the same kind of music, but my first proper rave was at Donny Warehouse in December last year. And it was for my birthday, and I remember me and my best friend and one of my other friends coming in, and we didn't know what to expect. So bearing in mind, people dress completely different in there, and we'd come in full rave gear. And before we got there, we were thinking, are we going to like stand out? And as soon as we walked in, we were like, fuck it.
No one gives a fuck. Yeah.
No one actually cares. And we literally had the best time. Like, I can't even explain how good it was. And I just remember finishing that night and we were like, oh my God, what the hell? Like, and we've always gone to Sheffield town to walk about Pop World, and we've spent so many years doing the same thing every weekend. To me, I mean, don't get me wrong, we've always loved 90s cheese, but going and seeing the same, I mean, I know we're doing that because we go to Donny Warehouse a lot now, but the music just wasn't it. And as soon as we walked in there and heard, because we've always been into that kind of music anyway, but we just didn't know that existed, and there isn't anywhere in Sheffield really that does that. So it was like a completely new world, and we were like, oh my God, we are never going out normally ever again.
Do you know what as well? You know how long I've been involved with rave music for, and all the things with Jade and Uprising and all that, but I've had so many discussions with people about this like town versus rave thing, and there's been so many like judgmental people over years and stereotypes about raving, and I think for me, like the town thing, it served a purpose for me, and it is good to go out and share drinks with your friends and have a dance and all that. But I became like, you go to the same places, same people, drink the same crap, talk the same crap, trying to pull birds and all that nonsense, and then these people who were there would have a certain perception of raving. So people would be like narrow-mindedly think raving's rough, it's full of drugs, it's full of people fighting, it's like unfriendly and all that.
I would say the opposite.
It is, isn't it? And you'll know because you've come into it fresh, so you've not come into it with any preconception, you've come in and seen it at face value. And actually what's ironic now is a lot of the things that people used to say about raving is actually true in a lot of the towny places, isn't it? So cocaine's rife these days, fighting, people getting stabbed, and all this nonsense. And I think last year, I went to pick Jasmine up from town, and I'd not been in town on a Saturday night or whatever, and it was like 11:30 or something, and I drove like down West Street, and I was like, when you used to do that all the time, you just blend into it, you don't care, but I was literally driving and thinking, this is fucking wild. Like, there's young lasses falling all over, going down back alleys, people laying on floor, spewing up, fighting. I'm like, this is mayhem. Yeah, people would have you think places like Doncaster Warehouse or the... and I found generally they're quite warm and welcoming.
I honestly, I've not had a bad time yet. And I mean, obviously there's some people that can be maybe a bit standoffish, but I've not once seen fighting. Pretty much everyone is just the friendliest people. I mean, obviously I'm on substances when I am there, but like everyone, it's... And not everyone does that. I have gone and done... Yeah. In fact, I think it was one when I asked to go on a guest list. I did one of them sober.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have been able to go and do a night out in town sober. But there, it didn't matter because the music's there, the people... Like,
that's
everyone
important as well, isn't it? Because I think like it's each to their own, and there's some sober people and there's some people taking drugs, but I feel like you're part of something, aren't you? And you're part of like a community as such, and you're right, going to town sober, because... Let's be honest, you could say raving for the vast majority of people is about going out and taking drugs, that's fine. Going to town is about getting pissed. I have this constant like to-ing and fro-ing between the two when I'm arguing about it, because the narrow-minded people would say alcohol's fine, drugs are bad.
I wouldn't say that. I think alcohol
you've been both sides at... I
think alcohol is horrendous. Obviously I still drink, but now because I obviously I don't want to endorse anything, but for me, I've found what works for me, and there was a time at Donny Warehouse as well where I had sort of been taking drugs, and I have found that I am so much more aware of my surroundings on drugs, because there was one point, there was a guy that was close to us, and like I just had my wits about me, and I thought like then I was like that on my bag, and I said to Lauren, I was like, just watch your bag, because like he's hanging about a bit. So I'm so much more aware.
Hyper-aware.
Even though I might look fucked, I'm very much aware of my surroundings. If I was just drinking, not a chance.
And that's
not a chance.
The other argument I had, say if you had a young lass that were going out, and she might go to town one night and she has 10 Jaeger bombs, and then she might go somewhere else the next night and have some MDMA. The uneducated person would say Jaeger bombs fine, MDMA bad. Well, actually, what you've just described, you're aware. They both have their pitfalls. They're both risky in their own ways.
Yeah.
And they've both done a lot of damage to me. But pound for pound, like, I would say that drinking spirits en masse is far more...
Wine.
Or wine. If a young person is out in Sheffield getting blotto, everything's slowing down, the brain's slowing down, they're stumbling around, people are angry, men or women or whoever are hovering around trying to get their own way. And I found raves, generally, if you were off your head and you barged into someone by accident, they'd probably give you a hug and shake your hand, wouldn't they?
Literally.
And if in somewhere like Sheffield, I'm not going to name any venues, but if you barge into someone, there's a chance you're probably not going to get a very good reaction. It's just an interesting comparison, because I like talking about it with people who've been both sides as well, because I think people are either on one fence or other, and really is. And like you said though, we don't endorse anything, but what
I was the biggest, like up until about 3 years ago, I'd never touched a drug in my life, and I was so against it. But now, and like obviously there are so many different drugs about, and because I've now done a drug that I know works for me. Obviously I know that there is a risk that I could always take something that isn't what it's meant to be. But for me, so I take pills, and they just immediately make me the happiest. Like, it just heightens everything, and I am such a happy person, and like I can't explain it, but it's a really good feeling. I would not now then go and try and take Ket or anything like that, because I know that pills have such a good effect on me that I'm happy to just...
You found what works for you.
Yeah.
And I've said this before on some of my content, but I think for me, pills were my drug of choice, and it's been 13 years, I think, since I last took one. And that, for me, I'd had some amazing times on them, and then some times where it messed me up. But that was more down to abuse as well, where, instead of going somewhere and having one and raving and then going home and sorting yourself out, it was carrying on for days on end and sleep deprivation and all that. But we went to Amsterdam in 2012, and quite a big hardstyle DJ, well, probably the biggest, a guy called Headhunters. He was like making a big like arena thing in Amsterdam, like his own concert, his first ever thing. And we all went over there, and I don't think I'd took drugs for like 2 or 3 years before this day. And we'd gone to Amsterdam in daytime, and we were Heineken, and it got to like 10 o'clock, and we've gone into this Ziggo, which is like a big arena next to Amsterdam Arena, and I'm falling asleep. I'm like, I am so tired. I went into smoking weed and stuff, but the lads had been doing all sorts through the day, and we were like, we need to sort something out here, because we've come here to go to this. This is the start of the event. It's on 10 a.m. till 6. We're all on his arse, like nodding off. So like, fuck it, let's get some pills. And we all like me and another lad had like half it, and just had half because we know the strong there, but also not had any in a few years. And I've got to say, and it's so important to speak about both sides of it, because I do speak about the bad side as well. This was the last time I ever had it, but I had the best night. The lights were flashing, the sound, the music, everything was just so enhanced, and it was like a really like clean buzz. And then we went back to the hotel, had a couple of hours sleep, which I'd never done before in Britain, having him and having loads and all that. And when we flew back in the morning from Amsterdam, and I was back in Kivo by Sunday dinner time, and I made a Sunday dinner and chilled out and watched footy that afternoon. And I'm like, if I'd have been drinking vodka Red Bulls all night like I used to when I'd stopped taking drugs, I would be in Amsterdam airport in a ball of pain, spewing up all day. And then I'd had a pill, had this great special night, and it kind of like rounded it off for me. Like, I love that, I'm never going to do it again, but it's like just, and I think I learned a lot about it then, because I'd had it in quite a bad, I guess it's the same as anything as well, isn't it? If you moderate, it can be good.
Yeah. If
you abuse it, then, but it's a really interesting comparison, because people tend to, especially with drugs, and again, this is an open forum, we say what we want about it, and it's educational, but they both can be evil.
Oh yeah.
And they both can be good.
Yeah.
I think what I've learned over the years is the more I push,
I think
the worse things get.
And I think this is the difference, and this is why, this is why another reason why I don't mind taking them now. Like I say, I will reiterate, I know there's risks that come with it, but when I went to Creamfields and I was doing drugs then, I was in a really, really bad place mentally. And
great point.
The come down and everything, one, I wasn't expecting a come down, and two, I was in such a bad place that's how it spiralled into me then ending up in hospital. Whereas now, I'm in a good place, so
it's enhancing
how I already.
Yeah, and that's a really important point, and probably a good point for us to move on actually. But it's the reason why you're using something as well, and the mentality behind it. Because a lot of people drink because they feel shit, and drinking when you feel shit, we all know it's a short-term escape, innit? But it's going to come back the next day to bite you on the arse 10 times harder. And I had some MDMA come downs that were beyond horrific, traumatic, that were being in a bad mental place before, then hammering it, not sleeping, and then trying to get your head around that. You could feel fine on a Friday night, and go out and take something, and by Sunday you're like rock bottom.
Yeah.
And nothing's changed other than what you've put into your body. Before we finish, I just wanted to touch on something you shared with me about your charity live stream. And did you have some kind of spiritual experience or something?
Something like that. So obviously I lost my mum, and I decided one day that, so I used to be a streamer on Facebook gaming, doing Call of Duty and things like that. And I was doing really well with it, to be fair. And one day I decided that I wanted to do a charity stream for British Lung Foundation. And at the moment that I decided I wanted to do it, if you rose, I think it was 2,500, they'd plant a tree in memory of whoever it was that you were doing it for. And at the time I was also looking for this supporter button. So basically, if you had 250 views in 1 week, you could get this button that meant people could subscribe.
Right.
It eventually got rolled out to everyone anyway, but at the time when I was doing it, you had to get the 250 views. So I decided I was going to do a 24-hour stream, bit ambitious. And from the moment I decided I was going to do it, I just got this overwhelming feeling that I knew I was going to raise 2,500, and I knew that I was going to get this supporter button. I just had this feeling. So anyway, I think it was about 2 weeks before doing it that I decided I was doing it. And I kept streaming. And anyway, on the clock I kept seeing angel numbers, like all the time. So I was like, every time I clocked them, I'd be like, oh, bit weird, it's another angel number. And it was happening so frequently that I was like, I just feel like my mum's behind me on this. Like I've just got this, it was just like an overwhelming feeling that she's just behind me. And anyway, I was in the lift, it was during COVID, and I'd had to go in for one day, and my manager came in at the same time. And we were going up the lift, and I was telling her this story about these angel numbers, and I was saying, it's funny because I keep seeing all these angel numbers. I've just got this funny feeling. I went, do you know what? I went, shall we see? I pulled my phone out and it was 15, and she just looked at my phone and went, fuck off. And I was like, obviously I was shocked as well. I was like, there's no fucking way that just happened. And I was like, I told you, like, I don't know, it's just a weird feeling.
Isn't life funny like that?
It's mad. So anyway, obviously that happened and I was like, what the fuck? And I was telling the story on stream at the time that night, and I looked at the clock and I was literally on stream and I went, fuck off. I went, look at the time. And it had happened again, and I was like, it's crazy, like, I've just got this feeling. So anyway, the time came that I was doing this 24-hour stream, and it was all going really well and everything. And it got to about, like, during the whole 24 hours, there'd been, like, 3 moments where I'd caught it on stream and been like, oh, yeah, this time. And then about 6 o'clock I think I was due to finish at, like, I want to say 11 o'clock in the morning, something like that. And I can't remember how much I'd raised at this point. I think we must have been sitting about the 2,000 mark. And it was about 6 o'clock in the morning, and this notification came through, and it just jumped to jumped an extra 500. I can't remember if it had gone to the 2,500 at that point or not. And someone from America had donated £500, so then obviously I was having this massive thing, crying on stream and whatnot. And by the time it got to 11 o'clock, which was 24 hours, I was like, in terms of viewers for this support button, I was like only a few away, which it was like, usually people would hit this viewers on the Sunday, so on the last day. Whereas for me, the week had just started, so within a few hours, I'd already got to nearly 250. And I was like, do I just stay on? And everyone was like, yeah, stay on till you hit it. So I ended up staying on for 27 and a half hours by this point, I'd got hundreds and hundreds of people watching, and we were all refreshing, and it kept I kept having to refresh it because it was like one away for ages and ages and ages. And then I finally refreshed it, and it came up, and by that point I'd hit £2,500 that I'd raised, and I was just a mess. And I was like,
how did you feel?
I was just bawling it gets to me now because I just knew that I just had this feeling that I was gonna do it, and it all just happened at once, and I was like, she was so behind me for me to have, 1, raised that amount of money, and 2, to have got that button, and it was just like,
very special, that, you know. So and you've visualised it and just made it happen.
Or she was behind me.
And you've had spiritual, I think, and when this time's going on, how are you keeping awake? How are you keeping stimulated for 27 and a half hours? Is it Red Bulls, coffee?
I think there was a lot of Monsters.
Yeah.
I think Lauren was sat in another room and she kept like bringing me food and stuff. She did the whole 27 and a half hours as well, so shout out to her. And I was playing different games with different people throughout the night.
So you're engaged.
So there were a lot of people that were supporting me as well, because like they were doing shifts, so like someone would play a game with me for a certain
That's going to keep you awake as well then, isn't it?
Yeah, but it was definitely difficult, but it was like when it got to that last point, it was just so worth it, and it's something that
just goes to show you, doesn't it, what you can do when you put your mind to it.
Yeah,
that's amazing. So how did you sleep after? Did you fall straight to sleep, or did you?
Well, no, I didn't, to be fair, because obviously at the time Lauren lived next door to me, and when she saw that I'd done it, she ran round and we both just hugged and we were both just absolutely bawling our eyes out. I think I probably stayed awake for a good 40 minutes after that, just because I was
your brain will still be fizzing as well.
Yeah, I was so buzzing from it all. But yeah, there was definitely a lengthy sleep after that.
Yeah. So just to finish off, if you could give yourself, when you were younger, any advice, what would it be?
Just don't give up. Not even just younger me, like to any kind of me throughout growing up, is just don't give up, because there were so many times where I very, very nearly did, and I'm so glad I didn't. And just have confidence in yourself. I still don't have the confidence that I should, but just have the confidence and don't let other people get you down.
Your story proves as well that, because I think a lot of people, when you're in the middle of something, it's very difficult to see the other side, isn't it? And giving up sometimes might seem the easier option or the best option, but your story definitely proved what you can.
I genuinely, if you would have asked me 2 years ago, if I would still be here, and two, if I would be out of it, I would have said no, not a chance. Like, there is no way on this earth I will ever not feel the way I feel. And now I don't.
And now you're off to Leeds raving all night.
Yeah, no.
Bless you. Thank you, Louisa.
You're welcome.
That was brilliant, honestly.